This is not the start and finish line at Le Mans. It is a service bay, with the engine cover propped open by a technician who looks more confused than impressed. This is the reality for a car that cost its owner nearly $1 million. The scandal here is not a single explosion or a massive corporate cover-up. It is quieter, more insidious. It is the story of how one of the most technologically advanced cars ever built became a glorified rolling beta test for the 1%. A masterpiece of engineering that could not always master the basics. To understand the panic, you have to go back to 2013. The automotive world was losing its collective mind over what we now call the Holy Trinity: the McLaren P1, the Ferrari LaFerrari, and the Porsche 918 Spyder. But let's be honest, Porsche was the weird kid at the cool kids table. McLaren had Formula One pedigree oozing from its carbon fiber pores. Ferrari was, well, Ferrari. They invented the concept of desire on four wheels. And then there was Porsche, the company famous for making sports cars you could actually drive every day without a team of engineers on standby. The pressure on Porsche was immense. They had to prove they belonged in this hyper-exclusive, hyper-expensive conversation. So they made some insane promises. A hybrid powertrain combining a screaming V8 engine with electric motors for a combined 887 horsepower. They promised it would dominate the Nurburgring. They even had the audacity to claim you could drive it to the grocery store. This was their hold my beer moment. The problem with hold my beer moments is that someone usually ends up with a broken lawn ornament. Porsche's desperation to be first, to make the biggest splash, meant they were building the plane while flying it. They were so focused on beating McLaren and Ferrari to the punch that the ask questions later part of the plan got seriously overlooked. The race was on, and Porsche was willing to cut some corners to win. So, what was the entry fee for this technological revolution? The sticker price started at $887,000. Let that number sink in. For reference, that is about 10 Porsche 911 Carreras. But that was just the start. Porsche, being Porsche, had an options list that could financially ruin a small country. The crown jewel was the Weissach package. For an additional $84,000, you got less car. Seriously, they charged you $84,000 to remove things. You got magnesium wheels instead of aluminum, carbon fiber everything, and a bunch of deleted badges to save a total of about 90 pounds. That works out to roughly $933 per pound saved. I think Porsche should really consider going on a financial advice show, because this is not financially smart. But the real cost was not on the window sticker. What you were actually buying for that mountain of cash was a carbon fiber tub and a prayer. You were signing up to be Porsche's final and most expensive quality control check. While the brochures showed the car carving up racetracks, the reality for many early owners was a special relationship with their local Porsche service center. You were not just buying a hypercar, you were buying a front row seat to Porsche's engineering department figuring things out in real time. The price of admission was high, but the real cost was becoming an unwilling participant in a $1 million science experiment. On paper, the 918's powertrain was an absolute masterpiece of German engineering. It used a 4.6-liter, naturally aspirated V8 derived from the RS Spyder Le Mans prototype, and it screamed all the way to 9,150 revolutions per minute. Then there were two electric motors, one on the front axle and one integrated with the gearbox, adding instant torque and all-wheel drive capability. The combined output was a staggering 887 horsepower. In theory, it was a symphony of internal combustion and electric propulsion working in perfect harmony. The car could hit 60 miles per hour in 2.5 seconds and had a top speed of 214 miles per hour. It was a technological flex of epic proportions. But then, you turned the key. Or, more accurately, You pressed the starter button. And sometimes, nothing happened. The reality for many owners was that this engineering marvel was haunted by electrical gremlins that would make a haunted house seem tame. The dashboard, a beautiful array of digital screens, would occasionally light up like a Christmas tree. The most common and most terrifying warning was the check hybrid system message. Imagine this. You are sitting in a car that costs more than a nice house, you are about to merge onto the highway, and your dashboard tells you the very heart of its technological innovation might be broken. It was the automotive equivalent of your brain texting you that it was not feeling great and might shut down for a bit. The irony was almost poetic. This was a machine capable of lapping the Nurburgring in under 7 minutes, a car designed to conquer the most demanding track in the world. Yet, it could be completely defeated by its own battery management system on a trip to get coffee. The complex cooling systems for the battery and the electric motors were another point of failure. The car would sometimes go into a reduced power mode if it decided things were getting too warm, effectively neutering its own performance. Owners quickly learned that the 918's biggest enemy was not the McLaren P1. It was its own software. Porsche had pushed the hybrid technology envelope so far that it occasionally tore, leaving owners with a very expensive, very silent sculpture in their garage, until a technician with a special laptop could fly in from Germany to perform an exorcism. If the drivetrain was a brilliant but moody genius, the 918's body was supposed to be its flawless exoskeleton. Porsche made a huge deal about the carbon fiber, reinforced polymer monocoque, the same material used in Formula One cars. It was lightweight, incredibly strong, and seemed truly exotic. The design was stunning, all swooping lines and active aerodynamics that looked like it was doing 100 miles per hour while standing still. But get up close, and the cracks in the facade, sometimes literally, started to show. For a car with a base price knocking on the door of $900,000, the build quality could be shockingly ordinary. Panel gaps were inconsistent. We are not talking about gaps you would need a micrometer to measure. We are talking gaps you could notice from a few feet away. On a $70,000 Cayman, you might shrug it off. On a car that cost as much as 10 Caymans, it felt like a betrayal. It was the automotive version of buying a 5-star meal and finding a fingerprint on the rim of your plate. The details mattered at this price point, and Porsche seemed to have missed a few. Then there were the door seals. Oh, the door seals. For a company that prides itself on building cars that can handle the Autobahn and the worst weather Germany can throw at them, the 918 had a bit of a drinking problem. Not oil, but water. The seals around the doors were notoriously finicky. If they were not perfectly aligned, and they often were not, they would leak. We are not talking about a minor drip. Owners reported water pouring into the cabin during heavy rain, turning the footwell into a wading pool. You are driving $1 million technological tour de force, and you have to worry about getting your socks wet. It was a humbling reminder that for all the cutting-edge tech, Porsche still had not entirely figured out how to keep the elements out of a roofless car. You were paying for a carbon fiber bathtub, and sometimes it really felt like one. The real scandal of the 918 Spyder wasn't just that things broke. It was that Porsche had to officially admit they broke over and over again. This is where the beta test theory really starts to hold water, and not just the water leaking through the door seals. The recalls began to pile up, and a clear pattern emerged. Porsche was learning about critical flaws from their customers, not from their own legendary testing. The first major recall was a real showstopper. It involved a faulty fuel line. In any car, a fuel line problem is bad news. In a hybrid hypercar with a high-strung V8 sitting inches from your head, it is a potential fire hazard of epic proportions. The official line was that a specific clamp could loosen, potentially allowing fuel to seep out. Imagine that phone call from your dealer. "Hello, Mr. Jones. About your $1 million car, we need you to not drive it because it might spontaneously combust." Porsche's solution was to replace the entire fuel line assembly. This was not a quick fix. It was major surgery on a car that was supposed to be perfect straight from the factory. But wait, it gets worse. Just as owners were getting their cars back from the fuel line repair, recall number 2 hit. This one was for software. The very brain of the car had a glitch that could cause a sudden, unexpected reduction in driving power. So you are merging onto a highway, you put your foot down expecting 887 horsepower of hybrid fury, and instead, you get the equivalent of a startled hamster on a wheel. The car would just give up. Porsche had to issue a software update to stop the car from having a panic attack under acceleration. It was like a laptop needing a critical security patch, except a laptop does not cost as much as a mansion and cannot do 214 miles per hour. Then came the third strike, and this one was a doozy. A problem with the rear axle mounting. Let that sink in. The part of the car that connects the entire powertrain, that screaming V8, and the electric motor to the wheels, was not mounted correctly. The bolts could come loose. This is not a "the radio does not work" problem. This is a "the rear wheels might decide to take a different path than the rest of the car" problem. It was a fundamental engineering flaw in the chassis, the very foundation of the vehicle. Each recall painted a picture of a company that was in such a rush to beat McLaren and Ferrari to market that they shipped a product that was in some critical ways not finished. The owners were not just customers, they were crash test dummies wearing Rolexes. So what was it actually like to live with this 7-figure science project? The ownership experience was unlike anything else in the automotive world. Taking delivery of a 918 Spyder should have been a pinnacle life event, a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. For many, it was excitement heavily tempered by apprehension. You would fly to the Porsche Experience Center, get the white glove treatment, and then drive away in your new hypercar with a lingering question in the back of your mind: what is going to break first? This is where you develop that special relationship with your Porsche service advisor. And I mean special. This was not a relationship built on oil changes and tire rotations. This was a relationship built on frantic phone calls about cryptic error messages and waiting for parts that simply did not exist in the normal supply chain. If your 918 had an issue, which it almost certainly did, your local dealer could not just order a replacement hybrid battery controller from the warehouse. They had to contact a special department in Germany, which would then have to engineer a solution, build the part, and ship it over on a plane. Your car would sit in a service bay for weeks, sometimes months, becoming a very expensive conversation piece for the service technicians. You were essentially funding a research and development department located in your own garage, but this shared trauma created a bizarre camaraderie among 918 owners. They formed a club that nobody really wanted to join, bonded by the unique frustration of owning a car that was both a technological marvel and a mechanical nightmare. Online forums became support groups. Owners asked if anyone else's car was throwing a powertrain malfunction code when it was cold outside. Responses were the same. "Mine does that too. Porsche says they are working on a software fix." They shared tips on which service centers actually had technicians trained to work on the hyper-complex hybrid system. They compared notes on how long they had been without their cars. It was a brotherhood of the broken, a fraternity of frustration for people who could afford any car in the world but chose the one that required the most patience. They were beta testers, but instead of getting a free t-shirt for their trouble, they got $1 million bill and a story about the time their hypercar had to be flatbedded home from a Cars and Coffee event. The real luxury was not the carbon fiber or the top speed. It was having the financial cushion and the sheer stubbornness to see the project through to the end. And then there was the Nurburgring, a 6-minute, 57-second lap time. This single number was Porsche's "I told you so." It was the justification for all the headaches, the proof that their technological gamble had paid off. They had dethroned rivals and cemented the 9/18's place in history. But that record came with its own cloud of suspicion. Was this a perfectly sorted customer car? Or was it a factory-built ringer? The speculation ran wild. Did it have a special tune? Experimental tires? Or was the weight mysteriously lower? Porsche claimed it was a production spec car, but in the hypercar world, production spec can be a very flexible term. The cost of that record wasn't just the millions in development, it was the reliability sacrificed on the altar of ultimate performance. For every owner whose car was stuck in limp mode, that lap time was a bittersweet reminder of what their car was supposed to be, versus what it actually was on a rainy Tuesday. So where does that leave the 918's legacy? It's the ultimate automotive paradox. This car was absolutely a genius piece of engineering that pushed the entire industry forward. The lessons Porsche learned the hard way from its complex hybrid system directly paved the way for the far more reliable and refined 911 hybrid. The 918 owners were the guinea pigs, and every modern Porsche hybrid is better for their suffering. For collectors today, it's a massive gamble. Are you buying a sorted, mature hypercar whose bugs have been worked out over a decade? Or are you buying a beautiful ticking time bomb that still requires a dedicated technician on speed dial? The market can't seem to decide if it's a visionary masterpiece or a nightmare to maintain. It's both. It proved Porsche could play with the big boys, but it also revealed that maybe they should have spent a little less time on the Nürburgring and a little more time on the door seals. The real scandal of the 918 Spyder wasn't a single failure, but the entire premise, selling a prototype as a production car. It was a testament to Porsche's incredible ambition and its staggering arrogance. A car that was utterly brilliant when it worked, and an absolute headache when it didn't. If you want to hear how this beta test nightmare connects to the supercars of today, watch the next video. Subscribe for more deep dives into the cars that promised heaven but delivered a mechanic's bill.